Okay, we're going to get started on our Pima County Board of Supervisors District 4 debate, and we have not drawn for the order for that yet. Ms. Pauline, our timekeeper, can you pull a name for me? Okay, and she pulled Steve, so we are going to start off first with Supervisor Steve Christy with his opening statement. Steve is asked to use a podium. He's communicated very well about it, so he's absolutely able to do that. He's not going rogue here on us.
I have to ask the timekeeper's indulgence for two things real quick. One is to acknowledge Representative Gail Griffin. She was instrumental in getting a water line to the Mount Lemmon Fire Department that helped control the fire up there, and it would have been much, much worse for structures. So Representative Griffin, thank you so much for what you did to help save Mount Lemmon. We appreciate it. The second thing I'm asking indulgence for is a tradition that I started when I ran the first time for supervisor, and that is to acknowledge my opponent, Mr. Backer's military service, his dedication to his country, and to his sacrifice of his time, his life, and his energy to protect our country. So John, thank you for your dedication to America. We appreciate that. I feel I deserve to be reelected District 4 County Supervisor for numerous reasons. Let me outline a number of them. When we were still allowed to go to church, my church's pastor recently said about how a church must survive is that the important thing is to keep the important thing the important thing. The same can be said of being a county supervisor. Let me outline a number of my important things. First, my very first vote I cast immediately after being sworn into office was to terminate Chuck Huckleberry's employment contract that would have, in effect, fired him. I pledge now that when his employment renewal comes up again, I will again vote to terminate his employment. 2, I have voted against Mr. Huckleberry's budget every year while in office and did just that again last week. 3, I have voted against every idiotic Democratic-inspired board resolution that came before the supervisors, such as resolutions against the U.S. pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords, resolutions against leaving NAFTA unchanged, resolutions against building a border wall, resolutions banning sex change therapy, resolutions creating safe spaces in Pima County, resolutions shutting down legal gun shows at the Pima County Fairgrounds. All of these meaningless resolutions were obviously attacks on our President Trump. Further, I voted against the county buying a bowling alley, the county buying more soccer fields and expanding Keno Sports Complex. I voted against the county using taxpayer funds to build a January 8th memorial. And I voted against a sales tax. I have been the strongest and most avid law enforcement partner that Sheriff Napier has on the Board of Supervisors, and you can just ask him. I have fought for receiving all Stone Garden grants and other law enforcement monies every step of the way and every single time. I have been the champion of businesses, large and small, especially restaurants, who have faced the brutality of overreaching regulations imposed by the boards of supervisors. No supervisor has spoken more clearly, resolutely, or effectively on the behalf of small businesses than I, as I believe small business is the future of reopening for a strong economy. And I believe in personal choice and personal responsibility, especially when it is dictated to us when and where we must wear face masks. There are more reasons why I should be re-elected, but I think all of you get the picture. Oh yes, one more. I have been an outspoken critic of the county using taxpayers' money to house, shelter, and medicate those individuals seeking U.S. asylum. Pima County should not be in the asylum seeker processing business, and I need to be on that Board of Supervisors again to carry on all of these fights. Thank you.
John, do you want to use the podium? No. Okay, and our other candidate for Pima County Board of Supervisors District 4 is John Backer.
Thank you, everyone. I'm not going to be using a podium today because I believe the most important thing you're hoping to glean from these discussions, these debates, is what's in here and what's in here. I think that's best accomplished by me speaking from the heart, no prepared statements. As of right now, I have no idea really what I'm going to say, but thank you for coming, and I am running to be your supervisor for two primary reasons. We're taxed too much, and we're not getting good value for our taxes. Now, I would like to thank Steve Christy for his kind words, and some people have a little heartburn with me challenging a sitting Republican. I think that's a fair thing to question. And I think, generally speaking, if the Republican in office is doing everything you think they should be doing, it's madness to try to do that. I think although Supervisor Christy and I agree on a good number of things, there's some things that we don't agree on, and I think it's healthy to have this type of debate, this type of challenge to hold our candidates accountable. And I don't believe that you have freedom without choice. So by having a choice in candidates, exercise your freedom. I started a career of problem solving personally when I was 13 years old. My parents were getting divorced. The result of that was I was virtually homeless and went hungry for days at a time. I had to figure out a way to get through high school. And then I had to figure out a way to get to college. And when I submitted the paperwork to try to get financial aid, I unfortunately found out my father hadn't filed taxes in 12 years, and they told me, we can't help you. So another problem to overcome at a young age with not a lot of guidance from my family. That's what led me to serve in the military. And I served at Davis-Monthan as an aircraft electrician, and served in the Guard, worked on the A-10 and the F-16s. And then I went into the corporate world, and I've spent 30 years basically solving problems professionally. I've worked numerous technology jobs, all levels of management, most recently working for IBM, where I spent 10 years traveling the world and America, helping make sense out of large amounts of data with visual analytics to help do things like fight terrorism and find fraud, waste, and abuse. So although I have a lot of respect for Supervisor Christy, I hope what you get out of this today is where we are different. I think when I'm trying to build a bridge with someone else, we usually look for where we're similar. And I think we have a lot of similarities. But in this case, you need to know how we're different and how electing me would be different than electing the current supervisor. Thank you very much.
Steve, we're going to put you right here. John right here. And we're going to give you gentlemen some mulligans to use as well. That's a different thing. Okay, this one's going to be John, we're going to answer first.
Okay.
Okay, the first question for you gentlemen. What is your first goal if you are elected, and in Steve's case, re-elected, once you start serving in January 2021?
Well, as we heard just a little bit ago, one of the first things that the new board will do will take on Chuck Huckleberry's contract. Make no mistake about it, I'm going to consistently vote against that. He makes $400,000 a year, the second highest paid county administrator in the country, and in my jobs throughout my career, I've got paid on performance. If he was getting paid on performance, he would be paying us because it's been so poor. And that would be the first thing I would do, and I look forward to being able to accomplish that. I think it's long overdue. He's been there far too long. And doing the things he's done to us instead of for us are very evident. Thank you.
I've already stated my position on Mr. Huckleberry and where I voted in the past against his contract and how I'm going to vote against it if and when it comes up again. My number one job that I see, my number one priority, is trying to resurrect a shattered economy from the COVID virus and the unnecessary shutdown of businesses in Pima County. The heartache, the cruelty that has been imposed upon business owners, employees, and the general public of an overreach made by boards of supervisors my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors has been, if nothing short than disastrous. I've heard somewhere between 20 to 30% of restaurants in Pima County will not come back, and that's an atrocity. The other issue that really is so troubling is that when I try to explain to my colleagues on the board what this devastation has wreaked upon businesses and employees and employers and private enterprise, they have absolutely no conception of what pain they have caused. They could care less. All they want to do is to shut these businesses down, put people out of work, keep our economy shut down, so when November comes around, they can blame it on the Republicans and ultimately President Trump. Now, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure out what they're trying to do, and they could care less about the havoc that they wreak upon people, businesses, and private enterprise.
Okay, Steve, hold on to that mic because you're going to answer this question first. Do you believe Pima County as an entity has dealt with COVID appropriately? And if not, what would you recommend have been done differently?
I feel that the COVID crisis, particularly in regards to how the governor has handled it, who we should be following, unfortunately, I hate to say anything derogatory about a fellow Republican, but I think recently he sold us down the river by allowing cities, towns, municipalities to create their own reopening proclamations, and this is what has really caused the pain. But I feel that the worst thing that happened in Pima County was the series of ridiculous proclamations on our restaurant industry, on spas, on pools, on gyms, without any real understanding of the damage that they were doing and not having any input from those impacted industries that could have helped give guidelines about how they would work together with the county to reopen. But they were not allowed to do that. There were 4 different iterations of this proclamation. We were having quote-unquote emergency meetings every other day to change something because the restaurant industry was giving such backlash to the Pima County Board of Supervisors. I was never so proud to see that happen, and I've been never so proud to stand shoulder to shoulder without a mask with the restaurant industry. So I feel there has been an overreach by Pima County. They've mishandled that whole issue of reopening, and what they've done to hurt people and businesses is an atrocity.
So obviously, we're going to agree largely on what Steve just said, and I apologize, meaning no respect. When I see Mr. Christy, I think Steve, because I count him amongst my friends, so meaning no disrespect. The one thing that I come to is in talking about small businesses in Pima County, one way that was a huge travesty to the small businesses of Pima County was when the board majority selected to give special treatment to those few businesses that didn't have to pay rent for 6 months, didn't have to pay utilities, but yet couldn't extend that same flexibility to homeowners and other small businesses around our community. Everyone was struggling. Now with the homeowners, many times the taxes are escrowed as part of their payment, so they wouldn't have felt as much of a pinch up front. But for the ones who own their homes free and clear, and there's a good number of those, and for the businesses that were already struggling, this was a very difficult thing to overcome, and it was really painful. And I think we have to do better. All they would have to have done to address that is to not have them pay penalties and delay, the penalties. Those who could pay could, those who couldn't could be delayed without the threat of a penalty. I think that's all that came to mind on top of what Mr. Christy had to say. Thank you.
Okay, John, you're going to answer first on this one. So that's how it's going to work. Once you're, because there's only 2 of you now, so that makes it easier for us. How would you deal with the relationship between the county and the city of Tucson, and how would you deal with the relationship between the county and law enforcement?
Well, in my 30-year career, I've worked with law enforcement a lot. I've had very dear friends that are either current or former members of law enforcement in the military. Have the utmost respect for them. I don't think they would find a better friend than in me. I know Mr. Christie's been a friend of law enforcement as well, not taking away from that, but absolutely I would make sure we take care of law enforcement. And obviously, you know, with what's been going on, there's always a few bad apples in the bunch, but me knowing the officers I've known, they're by and large fantastic people that put their lives on the line every day and deserve our respect and support. We call it the thin blue line for a very good reason. It is a thin blue line between civilization and chaos and anarchy. So as far as Tucson, I'd like to have a conversation with someone about the banner that needs to come down from downtown and the mural painted on the streets downtown. I think it's doing nothing to help ease the social unrest we're experiencing, and I think it's counterproductive.
We are very blessed in Pima County to have one of the most professional, knowledgeable, and articulate sheriffs elected, and he's a Republican, and that's Sheriff Mark Napier. He is, as it has to be understood, is an elected official, and he has the ability, the right, and the responsibility to run his own department, and he has been doing a terrific job. I've been very close with Sheriff Napier. We ran together 4 years ago, and it seemed at most of these types of meetings we always were sharing the venue. I've gotten to know him well, and there's no more caring, no more professional, no more knowledgeable sheriff than he has, and it is essential that he wins re-election. We cannot go back to the Dupnik days. We cannot go back to the Nanos days. We need to keep Sheriff Napier in office running our department, which is an exemplary department. He has kept morale up. He has worked to pay them their proper wages, and he has learned and worked to keep recruitment and retention up. He is a terrific asset. We need to kill him. We need to keep him. That'd be awful, wouldn't it? Excuse me. Yeah, right there. We need to keep him. As far as the city of Tucson, that's a whole different story. They have a completely different philosophy. They call it community policing. They are in a position where they are being pulled further left all the time by the extreme radicals. I will predict that there will be an issue before the Tucson City Council to completely disband the Tucson Police Department, just as we're seeing in Minneapolis and other large cities. It's a shame that a great city like Tucson is being brought to its knees by protesters and rioters and looters, and that they have the ear and the voice of Tucson city leadership, and it's cascaded over into our police force.
Okay, John's asking for 1 minute.
See if I can do random.
Wow,
Pretty talented.
good job.
So I wanted to just add on to that a bit with the CLEP-C Commission. Sheriff Napier is a good man. He absolutely believes, and he and I have spoke directly, that he believes he's everybody's sheriff, not just the Republicans. But what I've seen is, to his credit, he's really bent over backwards trying to be accommodating. And I think perhaps at times, maybe he's been a little too much, because I think if you don't stand for something, you might not stand for anything. But with that CLEP-C Commission, God bless Sheriff Napier, because they ran him through the ringer. Why would you ever have a law enforcement commission that hates the police? It just can't be done. And why would you have a commission like that with an illegal alien serving on that commission? So those types of things can't continue. We need to support our police.
Okay. Steve, you're going to lead with this question. What strategy and behaviors will you employ to make sure your district gets appropriate funding if there's a Republican majority and or if there's a Democratic majority?
Well, it's been a very difficult road to hoe with a Democrat majority. They keep talking, and I noticed when I first got on the board, they were making overtures to me to kind of find collaboration and work together. And I found that what collaboration really means is the bottom line is, what are you giving up and what am I gaining? So as far as the collaboration, it really was a facade. At the end of the day, they are all liberal, extreme Democrats, and their party ideology comes first. I wish I could say otherwise, that I can reach across the aisle with the Democrats, I can collaborate with them. Unfortunately, I can't in many, many instances. When it comes to getting the fair share of the budget as well as the attention that District 4 deserves. All I can do is what I've been doing, and that's fighting for what we need in District 4, and it's working because we have had roughly 60 to 70 miles of roads repaired in District 4, 32 of them alone in the Vail, Corona to Tucson region, and that hasn't happened in decades. So there are ways that I am able to utilize county staff, county information, and my contacts with a number of county officials that I can bypass having to deal with the Democrats because they are not interested in collaborating. What they want at the end of the day is to keep power in Pima County.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What strategy and behaviors will you employ to make sure your district gets appropriate funding if there's a Republican majority or a Democratic majority?
Okay, with the Democratic majority, I think we've seen that the only way you could hope to get anything done is to try to start with what's common, what the common ground is, and try to grow from there. And candidly, there might not be much common, but that's where you have to start. People have told me that maybe Supervisor Christy has done some compromising trying to get what he's gotten, and on one level that's fine, but in compromise, much in my real estate career, when we negotiate contracts and purchases, you don't typically in negotiating give something up unless you get something. So compromise, you're getting something. If you don't get anything, it's surrender in my book, and I won't surrender. I won't support certificates of participation. I won't support the types of deals like American Airlines bailout, where we paid $100,000 to bail out a contract that we weren't a party to. And there's far more there, but the certificates of participation are horrible. The Republican majority is much easier because you can work with the majority in that case much easier and decide a way to fairly allocate the funds. Maybe some combination of road miles in the districts, maybe some combination of the revenues generated from each district, maybe the combination of the two together to be fair. But I think having a formula in place, which takes a lot of the arguing out of it per se, would be a good thing to institute to make sure that fairness reigns.
Okay, and Steve's asking for a minute more on this topic.
I think it's important also, I didn't have the opportunity, but in addition to having to deal with the Democrat majority and the question that was posed earlier, I do want to outline, even with that Democrat majority, what I've been able to accomplish for District 4 in the Vail and the Corona de Tucson region. We created what is known as the Southeast Regional Council that's made up of community leaders from Vail all the way down to Corona de Tucson that meet on a regular basis and have silos of responsibility that has gotten the ear of the county, and they speak as one unified voice, and it has been extraordinarily successful and positive. And I'm most proud of this creation because it gives our region, the Southeast region, a voice of unity and a voice of power. I've also been the first supervisor ever that has established a Vail Corona de Tucson District 4 office. I have an office that is staffed, excuse me, in the Vail area. A person who lives, works, and recreates in that community. She knows everyone. Everyone knows her. She is the boots on the ground that gets the constituents their answers when they need them as soon as they can. I'm showing stop, so I will honor that. But I've got 4 or 5 other issues that I want to...
Okay, and John's going to get the next question. Steve, I need... Okay, John, on funding you receive for your district, how should that money be spent? Examples: road, infrastructure, county-owned property, county programs, etc. What should it not be spent on?
So funding in the community, I think first and foremost should be spent on public safety, kind of mirroring what we see at a national level. Our country is ultimately providing for our national defense. I think, not so much a standing army, of course, but public safety in Pima County has to be the highest priority, especially with the social unrest we see in our world today. Next, I think, is roads. And far too often, roads had been at the absolute bottom of the list, but it has such a huge impact on residences and businesses who maybe wave off coming to Pima County because the roads are so poor here and failing. So the types of things, and of course, the libraries, the parks, those types of things that civilizations have. The things that shouldn't be spent on is doing such things as what we just recently saw in Worldview. We wasted $20 million nearly on that situation, and the grifters that own that moved to Florida. I don't know what the result of that's going to be, if we're going to get any of that money back, but the promise was they're going to be there for a number of years, and we were going to make maybe $4 million in the end. Well, it looks like we've lost a lot more than we made. Pima County should not be in the business of trying to pick winners and losers, and they should let the free market work and let our tax dollars just simply provide the structure, the infrastructure rather, that we need and expect in Pima County. Thank you.
In conjunction with the question, there are other examples too that I feel that money is wisely well spent for our district. In addition to the creation of the Southeast Regional Council and the establishment of a Vail Corona de Tucson district office, we've also been in the process of establishing a regional library in the Vail area at Esmond Station. We are in the process of establishing a joint Tucson Police Department and Pima County Sheriff's Department substation. We are also responsible for and are excited about the fact that there is a huge Houghton Road improvement south of I-10 from the interstate all the way to the technical school that is going to be a tremendous asset to that very highly traveled area. No other supervisor in this district has paid as much attention and has gotten so much done as far as roads than we have since we've been elected. We have also just completed or in the process of finishing up the Sahuarita Road improvement. This was a huge issue because of the traffic between Sahuarita and points to the east and to the north. That is a wonderful positive development and improvement that we made for the community there. And we just finished the Colossal Cave road improvement as well that has been neglected for decades. So these are examples of how we've been able to accomplish things, how we've been able to improve our region, and how we feel that your money is best spent for our district.
Okay, and John wants to rebut that for a minute or add to it. That doesn't need to be.
So in talking about the roads in Pima County, I think it's interesting to note that Supervisor Christy actively campaigned for Prop 463 to increase your taxes. This is the highest tax county in the state. We get $100 million a year from the state and HERF and VLT to be used to maintain our roads. And for far too long, it's been ignored, not used, and let our roads go into failing conditions. The Army Corps of Engineers has said it costs 600% more to repair a failed road than to simply maintain it. We can't keep doing that. And then with certificates of participation, which is being used to fund a lot more of the road repair going forward, they're mortgaging county buildings at a premium without voter approval. We need to use the money as it was intended. That's why bonds always fail, because the residents of Pima County don't trust the Board of Supervisors, and especially Huckleberry.
Okay, and then here's going to be our last budget question. Can you outline your plan in general regarding the budget around taxes, spending, and debt?
I could only attest to what I've done for the last 4 years, and that is to vote against the budget increases that have been put together every year by County Administrator Huckleberry and the board's majority. Taxes, I voted against a sales tax. I will continue to vote against a sales tax. I will never vote for a sales tax. There are ways that when we go through these difficult times, and running and owning my own business for as many years as I did, I've been through difficult times, and I know what it's like when you have to tighten the belt and when you have to make savings and make cuts, how painful they can be. But there is a silver lining. You realize how well you can perform and function with less. And I think when we come out of this budget session and this poor economy, and make all the reductions that are necessary at Pima County, we're going to find that for years, what we've been saying on our side is true. We've had too much excessive spending, and we are able now to realize that we can operate efficiently, effectively, and safely with a lot less at taxpayers' less expense.
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. Can you outline your plan in general regarding the budget around taxes, spending, and debt?
Okay, well, I was there last year when Ally Miller raised the point that there was a lot of unspent money in the personnel budget. It seemed like the game that had been played for some time was that we would budget for unfilled positions, and then in large numbers those positions were never filled. In the circles I travel in, that would be called padding the budget. And then that money would be used potentially for whatever it wanted to be used for by Huckleberry, ideally. And, so there's opportunities still to reduce that budget. I would never encourage us laying off our county workers. They're hardworking people. I've been on the receiving end of layoffs before. Nobody wants to face that. But I think using attrition, but starting out with just taking care of those unfilled positions and not budget for them unnecessarily would be a huge thing. Then this year, although your taxes would have went down, it went up 17 cents per $100 of assessed value, adding $111 million to the county budget with everything we've got going on right now. There's a lot of poverty in Pima County. Before COVID hit, we still had 1 in 5 people in Pima County living in poverty. You've probably heard that the definition of madness is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. Well, folks, for far too long, we've had a Democrat majority, and we've seen firsthand what it brings. Look to the areas that have challenges now, California, Minnesota, New York. We don't need or want to be that. We can do better, and we must do better, and we will do better, but it's going to be in listening to our voters and treating their money as if it was our own and not wasting money.
I can just point to my record for the last 4 years of voting against the budget, of voting against more taxes on the countywide basis, and that I support fully the efforts of those, particularly Supervisor Miller and her work, and I stood and sat with her, supporting her on all of those issues that were just referred to, and that can continue on and should, and I plan on doing just that.
Steve, that'll be a mulligan. Surrender.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
But that's okay. Now this is going to go right back. Hand that back to John for a second, because he gets this question, but he kind of touched on it, so this might lead into more of what you wanted to say as well. Actually, question number 8, John. 20% of Pima County residents live in poverty. Mm-hmm. So how do we go about improving that situation? Do you have more that you want to add to that? You had brought it up in the last answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical to get rid of the board majority that's been holding the people in Pima County down for far too long. We have an environment in Pima County that's historically known as not being business friendly. We need to be more business friendly, but also the tax policy is really painful. With residential taxes, you pay 10% basically of your assessed value. The businesses pay 18%. So when a business comes here and tries to do business, especially the small and mid-sized businesses, they're usually paying that 18% on a lot more money than a homeowner would. So it really puts a tremendous burden on them. If we want to facilitate bringing opportunities to Pima County, we have to get our taxes under control and have a more even-handed tax policy. When we do that and attract more businesses here, not only do we have more opportunities, we spread the tax burden away from primarily the residents onto a broader business base to help make it easier for everybody. So I think that's a key thing there. I think I'll give some time back.
Okay, so Steve, you have 2 minutes for that question as well. 20% of Pima County residents live in poverty. How do we go about improving the situation?
I wish I could give you good news, but I'm afraid it's going to get worse due to this situation that we're dealing with the board majority continuing to work to keep our economy shut down. I cited some figures about restaurants and the amount of those businesses that are not going to be returning. We have relied too heavily for many, many years on our economic opportunities and development in Pima County, on our restaurants, on our gastronomy, on our food, on our wide variety of what we produce here for the food service industries, as well as for our golf courses and our resorts, and for our tourism elements of vacation. Those have been the foundations that have given Pima County some sort of a springboard to go to what we all talk about as the next level. And that next level, of course, is recruiting and attracting new jobs, higher paying jobs, higher technically oriented jobs that will attract people from around the world to come to where we are known for our restaurants and our golf courses and our resorts. The problem we're facing right now, which is so critical and why I'm so concerned that the situation is going to get so much worse with the economic level of our community, is that the very foundations that we have relied on, those foundations I alluded to earlier that have made us world renowned, are crumbling right before our eyes by the hands of the Democrat majority on the Board of Supervisors and the Democrat-ruled machines in Pima County. They want to make those businesses suffer so everybody suffers, and what's going to happen is that suffering is going to increase. So until we work to reestablish those foundational elements that have made Pima County world renowned and have built and put Pima County on the map, so we can then go to the next level, we're going to be in even deeper trouble than we are now with the poverty level, and it's not looking good.
Okay, so this is our final question. Steve, you're going to lead with answering this one, and this might sound a little familiar. We just asked it. What do you think is the most important issue that none of us are talking about?
I think the most important issue, obviously, is reopening our economy and saving our businesses and putting people back to work. And that obviously is going to require fighting those who are trying to do the opposite, and those people are the Democrats in our community. That we are talking about, I have been talking about, I have been fighting vocally, avidly, passionately about keeping proclamations out of the realm of private businesses and for trying to shut down our economy. And that is something that we will continue to talk about. What we're not talking about is how are we going to elect more Republicans? Why are we not getting more Republicans in office on the county level, on the city council level, on the school board, in all the important functions that have been democratically controlled? And we have seen the ruins of that failed policy that has been in perpetuity almost in Pima County of a Democrat-controlled society. We're not talking enough about getting them out and more Republicans in.
So I think other than the relative few that really pay close attention to what's going on in Pima County, what we're not talking about is the HERF and VLT money that's sitting there ready, $100 million a year, that could be used to fix and maintain our roads. It has such an impact on residents, vehicles being damaged, on businesses like we were saying, and it's important to know that. The other thing we're not talking about is certificates of participation. Most of the people that I talk to don't recognize how bad of an idea that is. Certificates of participation, once again, mortgage our county buildings without voter approval to create a debt that we still have to pay. That's wrong. And apparently, maybe there's not going to be any new bonds come up because they know they're not going to pass, and they're going to use this technique now to run us further into debt. And in Huckleberry and Green Valley described those certificates of participation, and this is on video on backer.org, incidentally. He said it's how we launder the money. And at another meeting about another fiasco, I shared with him, our tax dollars aren't dirty. We don't want them laundered. And our tax dollars aren't dirty until Huckleberry gets his hands on them. And that's what needs to stop.
Chairman, do we have any questions from the floor?
We have one.
All right.
There's
So we have one question. John, we're going to start with you on the answer. Remember, this is the speed round. You only get a minute. All right. Looks like it's a long one, so let's listen closely.
All right.
Perception is reality, and voters talk frequently on cronyism, worldview, Rocking K, and American Airlines are examples. How would you address issues like these examples to improve the reality in Pima County?
Well, those types of deals, most importantly, take important money away from our budget, makes it to where we can't pay our bills on an operational level. Roads should be fixed as part of the operational budget. Those who've heard me speak before have heard me say this a few times. The roads should be near the top. It should be an operational expense of our government. We should never be borrowing to pay for an operational expense. Just like I say, my 20-year-old daughters, I would never encourage them to go out and borrow money to pay their rent each month. It's a vicious cycle where we're paying those fees to borrow the money, the interest on top of it, which increases over time and takes more and more money away from the services that we expect and demand. So I think that's pretty much it.
Worldview is an issue that took place long before I got onto the Board of Supervisors, but it is an example of, again, picking favorites and perhaps making decisions that were based not on sound business practices, but by expediency. Rocking K is an example of something that has been in the works for decades, and it is going to be a terrific development. The area is going to be opened up for even greater expansion and development in the Vail community. It's going to attract people from around the world who want to move to Pima County, to our region, to live in a beautiful setting, in a beautiful planned development. And I think that when we talk a lot about these kinds of deals, we fall short of the benefits that there are out there that everybody doesn't seem to want to acknowledge, and that is jobs in the construction industry, bringing in more tourism, bringing in more residents, bringing in bigger and better tax bases. So I think that it's important that we take each case on its own and analyze each of them based on its value and on its attributes and also on its detriments. And you can't have one shoe fits all.
Okay, John wants a minute on that topic.
So as far as Rocking K goes, that's one of the projects that use certificates of participation to fund it. What we're doing in that situation, which Mr. Christie supports, is we're taking an individual developer, Diamond Ventures, and doing something for them we wouldn't do for every developer. I think it's $16 million we're effectively loaning them. If we've got money to loan, we've got money to fix our roads and do the other things we need to do, take care of our police and so forth. As far as American Airlines, that's another situation that Mr. Christie supported. He called it the perfect example of a private-public partnership. And in that situation, we gave $100,000 of taxpayer money to the American Airlines for a bailout on a contract the county was not a party to. Now, some might say $100,000, that's not much money. Taking the whole $1.4 billion budget, you're right. However, every $100,000 counts a lot. So there's a lot more of that type of stuff going on that needs to be. And the benefits are one thing, but in a county with 20% poverty, it's the cost that I think really shines over benefits a lot of times.
And Steve's going to have a minute on that topic as well.
1 second. Mr. Christie said that he didn't support a sales tax, but he had a road plan where he called for a sales tax. So I wanted to call it out.
Rocking K was and is a development that is going to be paid for 100% by those people who buy a home in the development and by the developers themselves. The money was forwarded in an accelerated version to get that project, which the community has been begging for decades, to extend Valencia Road north from Houghton to Old Spanish Trail. It has the support of the entire community, and Mr. Backer should know that The motion and the machinery to start that project was the issuance of the certificates of deposit, and in May of 2019, it was voted unanimously by every single sitting board member on the Board of Supervisors to issue those certificates of deposit to establish that Valencia Road. Every supervisor voted for it in May of 19. The community wants it. It's a great project, and it's going to be a great benefit to many.
Okay, now we're going to clear the front table and end with our closing statements, 2 minutes each. Supervisor Christy, you're going to go first on those.
I'll sit. Actually, yeah, this is fine. It must be noted that since becoming supervisor, I have returned to the taxpayers close to $400,000 of your money that my office did not spend. No other supervisor can say that. It must also be noted that since becoming supervisor, I have not accepted or allowed automatic pay increases imposed by the county for my office staff and employees. Just as it was in my own business, raises should be merit-based, not automatic. And another important thing, as I pointed out earlier, about 70 miles of roads have been fixed in our District 4, 32 of them in the Corona de Tucson Vale area. And that's all since I became supervisor. We are faced in District 4 with a horrifying threat. This threat comes in the form of a wild-eyed, extreme, radical, liberal Democrat by the name of Steve Diamond. I know this man. I know how he operates, and I know what he believes in, and he is a danger. He aligned himself with the open borders, anti-law enforcement, anti-Stone Garden cabal, and I know how to beat him, and that my experience against him matters and counts. And it will take me to be the one to take him on and win in November. I'm disappointed in having to be distracted by this grave threat and danger by the name of Steve Diamond by having to spend significant resources of mine, financial and otherwise, in order to conduct a primary campaign. I do have monies that I could have spent helping other Republicans win or to help get out the vote, but not now, thanks to my opponents running against me. But it will take my knowledge, and especially my almost 4 years of experience, to defeat this Mr. Diamond. And should he win, and there be another Democrat like him on the Board of Supervisors, the results would be disastrous. I ask you to help me beat this Mr. Diamond. Help me keep my seat on the Board of Supervisors for District 4. Please support me. Please vote for me. And, oh yes, I love being your supervisor. Thank you.
So let me take one point on right away. When it comes to a primary challenge, when we send athletes to the Olympics every 4 years, we don't send the people that we sent before. We have Olympic trials. Not that we have anything against necessarily the person who participated last year, but the only assured way of picking the best in that time is to have a competition. And I have one question. How much does it cost for a sitting incumbent Republican to win his seat back if he has a stellar record to stand on? When I've walked these neighborhoods and obtained the signatures to get on this ballot, when I said what office I was running for, almost unanimously, many of them said, "Thank God you're running. What is he thinking?" Now, as I've said, Steve Christy is a nice man. I appreciate that he calls out my service, and but this isn't personal. This is the votes, the issues, and we've got some strong problems here that need to be solved. And we do that best by listening to the people. A lot of times we think of Board of Supervisors as people who go in and sit at the dais and vote on issues. I think the important thing that's missed here is getting out into the community and listening to the people. I heard a quote the other day that's really good. It says, "The questions you ask are more important than anything you could say." And if we look into that a little bit, when we say something, we're sharing what we know or what we think we know. When we ask a question, we're learning. And isn't life all about continuous learning? Learning what people need and want, what needs they have, and what ideas they have to make our community all that it can be. I pledge to you that this seat is not Mr. Christie's seat. It won't be my seat when you elect me. It is, always has been, and always will be your seat. And when elected, I won't forget who put me there. Thank you.
All right, folks, that concludes our debate. Thank you all for coming, both electronically and in person. And thank you all who are watching on Facebook. I think it's been a success. And I would say go forth with what you've learned and vote. And the other thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank the folks here at LD14 who worked so hard on this. Heather Floyd, our moderator, and also our first vice chair, Pauline, who is the timekeeper, and also our executive committee that arranged the questions. I'd also like you all to consider in the future, LD14, consider what we do, consider working with us, supporting us, coming to our meetings, checking out our website. We need help. We need more people to pull the wagon so we can help save our state and our county and our country. Thank you all very much. With that, the meeting is adjourned.